This is Travis Wayne Goodsell. I just finished watching Season 7, Episode 17 of Blue Bloods. It was the one where a guy was falsely accused of being a victim, or no, an attacker, or some kind of violent crime. And he was locked up for 10 years of his life in a mental institution because they chose to, well, they found him not competent for trial, I guess. So there was no trial. And of course I got flashbacks. I've told about it, but I never got around to the aftermath, or after I got out. So we'll see if I can sum it up for you. 1997, my then wife of 5 years up and leaves. She gets assistance from the church, the bishop here in Riverton, and the bishop up in McGrath, Alberta. And our parents, her parents were divorced, so it was her dad and her sister who came down. Sister had just gotten back from a mission in Taiwan, and they came down with a U-Haul, and my dad helped pack. She took everything except my clothes, that pretty much it. She took the computer of mine, which contained the floppy disks of my initial research that I made the discovery in February, 2 months earlier. And away went my 2.5 kids. Then, for the next 10 years, I'd been appealing, or petitioning as it's called in the First Amendment, for a redress of grievances, going to everybody. The Canadian government, which I can only write to them, and it takes a month to get up there, and then it takes a month for them to respond and get it back to me through the mail system. And then when they said, well, you're going to have to come up here and fight it in the courts, I knew I couldn't do that. I'm not a citizen of Canada. And so there was no way I was going to be allowed in the country to take on the case, let alone where was I going to live, where was I going to stay for the duration of what could have been years trying to deal with it in the courts up there. And so that was their way of dealing with me. I went to the governor, which I believe was Huntsman at the time, Huntsman Jr., who's now the U.S. ambassador for Russia. His office has a person that responded, and I was told to comply with Canada. Yeah, an American citizen being told to comply with a foreign government. And apparently they hadn't read the Constitution either. And then went to the courts. I only knew of the federal court, and went there and asked the clerk, is this where I sue the government? He said yes, and I had to learn all by myself how to prosecute a case, submitting and filling out the documents. And yes, there were times in the beginning where I had to resubmit forms and add additional information that I didn't know I needed to put in. And then the judge he was good enough to recognize that I was doing this on my own and first time, and gave assistance, lenience, I guess, in allowing my mistakes, not knowing the processes or procedures. And after years of trying over and over again, the judge finally came down and said that I could no longer pursue legal action. And so what does a guy do when he's denied his rights? My parental rights in this case. And I didn't find out until last year that the laws of Utah and the laws of the land were such that a spouse can legally take away children from another spouse, and no crime. So that doesn't make sense. But nevertheless, I didn't know it, and I was petitioning, trying to get my kids back. Wouldn't you? And after the judge had denied me petitioning for a redress of grievances, Mark Shurtleff, former Utah Attorney General at the time, took me to the state court. So I got to see what that was like in that building. And Michelle Bloomquist, whom I knew from the older singles ward, had just been promoted to commissioner and was dealing with the case. And that gave me a little bit of hope, but it was immediately gone when I found out that Shurtleff was being called the Rock by everybody in the building. And yeah, apparently her court, as she called it, allows for me to talk with the prosecuting attorney to discuss the case beforehand, which I can't find that in the Constitution anywhere. So I told him my kids were kidnapped, and he wanted nothing to do with it. Didn't want me to even talk about it. And so I said, so you're working on behalf of my wife? No, the state. But you're going up against me, so you're working on behalf of my wife. He would never confess to it. You know, if he's working for the state on behalf of my wife, ex-wife at the time, then you're working for her, free of charge, apparently, because you're fighting to solidify her divorce against me, when I was fighting to get my kids back. And so he told Michelle all about it in the courtroom, and I wasn't able to do much talking at all. And she sided with Shurtleff, and the Utah law courts, her court, solidified the divorce against me, and was therefore ordered to pay the child support in accordance with the divorce. And then she gave a snide remark saying, next time get a lawyer. So, yeah, I never saw her again at church after that. I didn't stick around too long much after that anyway. And then the next summer, well, almost summer. It was still spring. It was in May. Uh, the Utah laws that had just been approved previously were now going into effect, and one of those laws was taking away driver's licenses of those who are not paying child support. When I was at court, I didn't have a job. And that's what Shurtleff was doing, was he was trying to first establish that the divorce was legitimate, and then once he establishes it legitimate, then he can come after me for not paying child support. I had no job. I was financially ruined. She got the divorce, and then all of a sudden, Office of Recovery Services here in Utah took more than half of my paycheck. I could no longer afford to live in, I guess it's the subleased house. Gabriel wanted to rent out a room in his apartment, and so I would give him, I think it was $300 a month, and that was too much. I didn't have enough on my paycheck to pay my rent, let alone other necessities, so that I can live. And so that's the condition why Shurtleff came after me. And so now, when Utah had passed that law and started implementing it, my parents had made me work for my mom, to do the work for my mom. They had her be a contractor with the post office in Draper, and I would be the driver, and my dad would pay me cash. And so when this law got passed, I knew exactly who was the author of that law to the Utah legislature. They were coming after me so that I could no longer drive, let alone, take care of myself in my parents' place. Because my dad had already threatened me numerous times, get a job or you're out of this house again. So the first time was back when the woman formerly called my wife, slammed the door on the kids and I, as we were all going to go out for a walk for family home evening. And I had to calm the kids down as they're in shock and horror as to their mom's anger. And my dad thought it was me that slammed the door. Never been violent in my life, and yet my dad assumes it was me. Apparently he was projecting. But yeah, so in 2008, after I learned that I had to be very cautious driving around town, driving on my mail route, I then find pictures in my parents' bedroom where their computer is. And those pictures are of my kids visiting my parents at my sister's place. So that was a devastating blow. Apparently they'd been coming year after year to visit my parents and my other siblings and their kids, and I was left out of the picture. And so for the 4th of July, I rushed to finish what I titled Modern American Utopia. I didn't know where to publish it. Barnes & Noble was putting out the hints that they might consider doing a self-publication service for $2,000, I think, for a book, but they never got it up and running. And so I had no idea where to go, or let alone how to get the money. But I had other books. I had my research that I had redone, and the further research with the vocabulary that I had done. And I just had a computer and a printer. The computer I was able to get way back in the day when I still had a job. I had to buy another one. First it was an e-machine, and then the AOL service didn't do so well. It seemed to be connected with my dad's computer, because my dad got a virus because he had NetNanny, and NetNanny was denying him Hotmail service, and so he stopped the NetNanny, and then next thing he knew, he got a virus, and then my computer was acting all weird too, and so I had to buy another computer after that, and I don't remember what kind of system I had then, but it was one of the cheap ones. But it was enough for me to print off my books so that I'd have a physical copy. And so yeah, I wrote Modern American Utopia as a commentary of the Constitution. It was the sum total of my knowledge about a utopian society, and how America had forgotten the Constitution. And so in that book I also put in the actual doctrine that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is supposed to be adhering to, according to the Book of Mormon, that members of the church were not adhering to it. If you've listened to some of my other videos, you'll know about the Singles Ward Bishop, branch president, who never even read the Book of Mormon, and then started implementing white supremacy in his branch, his Singles branch. Only white bread, must wear white shirts. And so that's where the video of the white crackers comes in. People have lost interest in that, I guess. But then the 6th of August came around, and that's that first wife's, former wife's, birthday, and it was also the date when she got the finalization for our divorce. And I had found out that my kids were coming down again, unbeknownst to me, and that was too much. And so on the morning of the 6th of April, or August, sorry, I went downtown with all the copies that my paper amount and binders that I had available I could handle, and delivered my petition for a redress of grievances in the form of the book, Modern American Utopia, to the Capitol building, where the Attorney General, the Utah Attorney General, is, and you're supposed to give him a notification for prosecution cases. And I went and gave one to the courts, both the federal and the state court, now that I knew where the state court was. and also to the church at their administration building. The Discovery got it wrong. They said I gave it to the church office building. No. I knew exactly where I was giving it. So it's those little details that ruin a case for a prosecutor. But they didn't care. And I also gave it to X96's KXRK, Provo, Ogden, Salt Lake City, Utah. The Radio from Hell show, Carrie, Bill, and Gina. Because I had listened to them every morning. And I also gave one to the Salt Lake Tribune. Not the Deseret News, not LDS newspaper. And so I was hoping that somehow, somewhere, someone would help. Because that's what a petition for a redress of grievances is. It's a call for help. Church security were the only ones that harassed me that night. I was banned from Temple Square for 3 days, and one of the guys mockingly told me that the church leaders were never going to see my book, and they wouldn't let me go. They surrounded me. I should probably put that picture as the thumbnail. I'll have to see what I can do about that. And all I wanted to do was go to the next place, which was the Capitol. Or actually, yeah, the Capitol was next. And they didn't want to let me go. They threatened me when a cop car came driving by. Oh, we're going to tell the cops we're going to have you arrested. For what? Giving you guys a book? You know, the church leaders say they're not in bubbles. Yes, they are. Don't let them lie to you. Anyway, I was able to make my deliveries and went home and waited to be arrested. Because if Mark Shurtleff can do what he did, what the courts, what the governor, I knew that nobody was going to help me. So either they were going to ignore me and not do anything, or they were going to come and arrest me, just like Abinadi. I was born and raised Mormon. I actually read the Book of Mormon. I actually study it. So I knew about Abinadi. I knew that when you tell people that they're corrupt, and that they need to stop it, and treat people equally, that they get upset, and they attack. You see it here on my videos. People don't like getting told they're wicked. And 2 weeks go by. And then I come home from work, and sure enough, a gun pointed at my head saying I'm under arrest. They didn't tell me what for. They read me my rights, but then they had a cop sit in the back seat who in the discovery said that I had given a head nod to whatever question he was asking. And they don't even say what question he was asking. It's just ridiculous. They try so hard to violate our rights that they lie so that they can get an arrest. And so yeah, when the sex predator bishop was arrested, and I read over about how the officers who were undercover prostitutes were horrified for their lives when he pulled out his penis, and then locked themselves in the bathroom because they feared for their life when he took out his penis. I knew exactly what they were doing. They were trying to influence the court so that this guy would be forced to plead guilty, so that they don't take it to court. That a Mormon audience might say, no, I think you guys are being extreme on this. He's a bishop, he's a good guy. 98% of all cases in Utah never go to trial. That right is denied to us. It's 95% across the nation. 98 in Utah. And then I've told you guys the story about my jail experience and all that, so I won't go over that again. Oh, not yet. Yeah, charged with 3 counts of terroristic threat, which were second-degree felonies. And the federal court was not involved. I found out through mugshots.com that I did have an FBI case. They had a file number all set for me, similar to Brian David Mitchell, of whom I knew in jail, in the Salt Lake County jail there. Because his situation was that the state decided, oh, well, he's mentally ill, we're going to lock him away for life in the Utah State Hospital. And the Smart family didn't like that. And with Orrin Hatch backing them, the case was brought to the federal level. And so he was reevaluated, and what do you know? He's magically competent. And so, yes, as you're seeing here, everybody is corrupt. Not just the government and the police, but also the psychiatrists. Just like Nazi Germany, guys. The psychiatrists are being used by the state to lock up individuals they find objectionable or opposition. And so when the Smarts got Orrin Hatch involved, they made sure to put him in prison for the rest of his life rather than at the state hospital, where everybody believes that that's a pleasure paradise, that we get away with crimes because we're not locked up in prison. Well, I'm here to tell you, it is hell on earth in the state hospital. And if you're unaware of Utah's history with the asylum that it used to be called, you got another thing coming. Maybe that can be the theme song. If I remember, I'd have to write it down, I guess, but doesn't matter. I'm going to pause for a second here while I deal with this. Okay. If you go to prison, the laws of the land grant you prisoners' rights. They have to treat you right in prison. They can't just throw you in there, lock the key, and you have no rights. You actually still get human rights. But when you are under psychiatric evaluation, that's a whole different story. And the government does not go there. They allow psychiatrists to reign over people. And such persons no longer have any rights whatsoever. And I soon found that out when I tried to petition for redress of grievances while I was locked up at the state hospital. That was their verdict. That, sorry, you've got no rights while you're there. And so yeah, that's all. That experience is a video for another time. But I was given an illegal and internationally banned mental diagnosis, which means it was a fraud. It's not a legitimate diagnosis, just like with Abinadi, because he went around telling people they were wicked and they needed to conform to the Constitution, the law of Mosiah. They instead called him mad, which is not angry mad, but crazy mad, along with being a threat to the king, which is another term for terrorist. Because in the 1800s they didn't have the word for terrorist yet. And so, yeah, with my legal case sealed, because they charged me with terroristic threat, 3 of them, second-degree felonies. So they made sure to seal the case. So nobody in the public eye can ever just do a public document request to find out what's going on. And the church had the Deseret News remove all my comments in their paper, on the online thing. And so up until I no longer had an internet access, I was commenting on articles in the Deseret News. And I knew this, not just because I'm no longer there, because you guys will never know, but you will know when you find out that there are people responding to a couple of my comments that are no longer there. One was on R-rated movies, and the other one was on Hubble not being the originator of the Big Bang Theory. Excuse me, it was a Catholic priest. And back then, it wasn't well known about this Catholic priest. Now it's readily available on the online. Everybody knows about it now. So that Hubble no longer is the credit for it. It's that Catholic priest. It's a French name, Lemaitre or something like that. And so, yeah, they were removing me and erasing me from history, just like the Egyptians did with previous pharaohs that they didn't like and didn't want kept in the records. They would carve out their face and try to erase them from the record. And that's what Utah tried to do to me. I was never going to go to trial, because when they tried to do a forced med hearing in the courts, because the first attempt at the hospital failed, so the second time was in the courts, and that allowed my lawyer to finally do something as a court-appointed lawyer. And he was the one that set me up in the first place through his social worker helper. But you know, we finally were able to point out one of the charges, that the church was being called a government agency. Technically it is, isn't it? But it's not allowed to be. And so the judge told the prosecutor to tell Mark Shortliff, see, conflict of interest is involved here, isn't there? That he needs to either drop the charge altogether or find another charge and submit that to the court. And so he submitted a Class B misdemeanor of public disturbance of some kind. And they immediately stopped the court proceedings. And so the hospital was then ordered to force me on meds, on drugs. Remember, I don't have a mental illness. They lied to the courts about what I had, which is an illegal diagnosis, internationally banned. And now they were forcing drugs in me. If you know anything about Russia during the Cold War in the 60s, that's exactly what Russia did to opponents of the government then. That's why it's internationally banned. It's because of what Russia did. And if you don't know anything about drugs, psychotropic drugs, they are slowly murdering those who are vulnerable in Utah and throughout the world. Everybody who's given drugs, they don't cure, they always treat. If you listen to the TV, the commercials for drugs, those aren't for psychotropic drugs. Those are for regular illnesses. But pay close attention. They never say they will cure. They always twist it to say treating the symptoms, the side effects. When you take drugs, there are side effects, whether it's rash or other things. And so they give you drugs for the side effects. With mental illness, what they're treating is the outward behavior of the person. The drugs are behavioral control. That's it. They don't know what the cause is, and so they don't have anything to treat the cause and cure people. They don't even try. The pharmaceutical companies are all making drugs to treat the outward symptoms. And that is killing people. My right kidney got an infection because of the drug they gave me. Last week, it was a little tender. And so I'm always aware that it may reoccur, because that's what the doctor said. Although it's now going on to 4 years since that kidney attack that had me go rush to the hospital, and where the nurse was hitting on me in front of my fiance. I was too much in pain to properly address the situation. So maybe I can put that as my thumbnail picture, as me in bed during that time, or in the, I guess it was the hospital bed, although she also took pictures of me at home in bed. Yeah, the state of Utah, led by Mark Shurtleff, ordered by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, put out a hit on me. And that's the video I did with that title. They tried to murder me through the system that is anti-Constitution. And so, how did I get out? I wasn't supposed to ever get out. The time ran out and I was civilly committed because of the extremity of the charges against me. Remember, if they were all misdemeanor charges, they couldn't keep me there. And technically, according to Utah law, they had to be first-degree felony charges. And so what they did was use the 3 second-degree felony charges and call them aggravated, calling my book a weapon of mass destruction. And thus the case was sealed, and thus were able to justify keeping me there longer than Utah law allowed. And remember, I never went to court. I was never found guilty. A person is found guilty and has to prove his innocence. in this nation and in Utah. Don't ever believe that we are innocent until proven guilty. That's an outright lie. The cops do everything they can. The prosecutors do everything they can to win their case. And that involves cheating. That involves lying. That involves fraud. Planting of evidence and stuff like that. Trumping up the charges so that you'll plead to lesser charges so that you can go home to your family, to your property, to your job, to your life. And so, how did I get out? I wasn't supposed to. The evaluator retired. The one who told me that he's never going to pass me because I could lie on my evaluation. And you might think, well, what was the evaluation? How were you able to lie, Travis? Because we get a booklet. We are supposed to memorize the booklet when we're evaluated. We have to answer the questions, and all we'd have to do is memorize the book. If we can memorize the book, we're competent for trial. So there's no way to cheat unless you have the handwritten book in front of you as he's asking you the questions. That's the only way to cheat. You have to memorize, and thus no one passes because nobody else is capable of memorizing all that. And as what happens is that people plead guilty in the hospital while they're under for competency. And that's what the booklet tells us, is that we have other options than going to trial. The Constitution says, no, you don't. You go to trial. You do not plead guilty. You go to trial and be found guilty. So, but the hospital on my room search, they confiscated all my hospital paperwork and the book and all that. So I don't have access to any of that anymore. So I'm not able to share that with you. And Utah law has now changed it. That's no longer the evaluation questions anymore. Utah law, since May of 2018, now give full confidence to the evaluators and the psychiatrists. Whatever they say, the court will trust them. So they can come up with whatever evaluation they want. And so if they take me in again, I will never get out this time. They've made sure of it now. But when I got out, also, the evaluator quit or retired. The psychiatrist retired. And Shurtleff, of course, retired. And his buddy that he put in after him was found to be under corruption, and so there was that big corruption trial here in Utah, and FBI refused to release all the documentation that the prosecution was asking for, and their star witness, who was already on trial himself for his own crimes, refused to testify, and so he was held in contempt of court, and the prosecution's hands were tied. They had no case as a result. And Shurtleff was let go, dropped all charges, and then he later sued for $1 million And I guess he got it, because I'm not hearing anything more about it, because you usually have a non-disclosure agreement once a settlement is reached. And then the other guy, he went to trial. He's among the 2% in Utah that got to go to trial. And the Mormons supported him in his trial, and they refused to see the corruption that was going on. And so they said, not guilty. He's one of us. He's not guilty. And so, yeah, they had no choice but to drop Shurtleff's case. And so then I get released into what was wellness recovery. After the new evaluator magically found me competent. She was new, and I had it memorized, obviously. 6 years. I knew the book back and forth. And so, yeah, okay, you answered the questions, you're competent. But she was new, and everybody else was in on what it was that they needed to keep me there. But she was new, and they couldn't just go to her and say, you need to make sure he doesn't pass, because that wouldn't be right, would it? And so they got another evaluator, and he decided, we're not going to go by the regular evaluation questions. We're doing it my own way. He still passed me, because what could he do? If he says that I'm not competent, well, now we have to have a third person evaluate me, and they only had the two. And so then you have this new hire. You don't want to discredit her right from the start. So yeah, he knew he had no choice but to say I'm competent. And then the prosecution under Sean Reyes dropped the charges. They weren't going to pursue legal action in the courts now that I'm found competent. After all, I'd already served 6 years. 6 years, never found guilty. 6 years of my life taken from me for petitioning for a redress of grievances. And I had been administered a drug that was going to cause an emergency situation that was going to murder me. The guy on the Blue Blood show got 10 years. And there was no indication that he was suffering from the side effects of the drug. And so wellness recovery is where they sent me first. Wellness recovery has been shut down. It's no longer in operation in Utah. It was a place downtown that had mold, and my allergies to mold were picking up my breathing problems again. And I was there longer than a typical person would be there. More than 3 weeks, and they finally put me in Valley Plaza. I won't go over it. I'll do a special video if I ever get around to it on that. Valley Mental Health changed their name to Valley Behavioral Health in 2014 when I got out. And they have housing, but it's not enough housing, because I've been told that over 1 million people in Utah have a mental illness of some level, of some kind, of some diagnosis. Over 1 million in Utah. Valley Behavioral Health has nowhere near that many apartments There's 72 in Valley Plaza. That's the only one for those who are severely mentally ill. The one I'm in, it's for those who don't need assistance. And nobody is supposed to come by. And so when Beth came by and caused the whole problem that I've been talking about in other videos, yeah, they tried to turn this place into assisted living, like Valley Plaza. Danville Development, the renters of this building, put it in their website, changing as Beth changed with HUD to relabel this apartment. They were trying to control us. We're not under court order here. We're free citizens. I got my rights back. And so they tried to get me back into assisted living. My original therapist, when I got out at Valley Behavioral Health at North Valley, there on Main Street, the therapist said, I don't need a therapist. I'm fine. And she dropped me. I continued to get my shot. They put me on a shot rather than pills because, I can stop taking my pills, which, yes, I would have. They knew me in the hospital, and so they knew that I needed to be put on a shot. And so I was still going to North Valley to get a shot, but no longer a therapist. But then when Madison came to work here as a caseworker, they were trying to give us little assistance. The Valley has several apartments that are for minimal assistance. But this and Crossroads, they're supposed to be for those who are almost ready to live out in the community again. No assistance. Nobody coming to check. Nobody doing apartment checks. Nobody coming over here to run fire drills and give us training and help us in the community. Taking us to Walmart. None of that. We're supposed to be able to live on our own. Now, if the government would pay us at least a living wage, because a minimum wage isn't enough, but under a minimum wage, that would even be more than what we're getting. We get less than minimum wage with those who are on Social Security especially. I got on disability. When I was evaluated by the disability agency, they said, no, you're not disabled. We're not granting it to you. You've seen a pattern here. And it was North Valley psychiatrist, or the one prescribing the drug, who then put in her word on the matter. And so I was accepted for disability. And so here I am with no mental disability whatsoever, and I'm on disability. Now, disability, for those of you who don't know, is what I paid into it when I worked. Those who are on Social Security, SSI, that's the welfare. But those who are in the system getting SSI, they actually have mental illnesses. But it's unclear as to what they actually have, because what the drugs they're given alters their behavior. And that causes problems also. And so when you're given behavioral modification drugs, they create you as having a mental illness because they've altered your behavior. And so it's unclear as to how many of these million in Utah seriously and legitimately have a mental diagnosis, a real one, not a fake one like mine. I hope I'm an anomaly, but I fear that's not the case. Because like I said, Brian David Mitchell also was put through this process until the feds took over. And all of a sudden, no more mental illness. It's gone. He's cured. Lock him in prison. Now what he did was a crime, not an action by a mentally ill person. I hope you guys understand that. So yes, 2 people that I know of that don't have mental illnesses. And the one was a real legitimate criminal. And probably should have gotten the death penalty. Utah is a death penalty state, so I don't know why they didn't pursue that. But I guess because of the federal government decided not to pursue the death penalty for him. But yeah, my case, trumped up charges, bogus charges, because we were knocking them down to misdemeanors. And but yeah, if all of my charges were made misdemeanors and I had served 6 years, that would have been excessive punishment in violation of the Constitution. That's why it is so vital that everyone be found guilty before they are punished. We shouldn't even have jails. Nobody should be going to jail awaiting their trial, because every poor person can't pay for bail, and thus that violates their constitutional right to not be charged with excessive bails and fines. If you can't pay for bail, it's excessive. So, but yeah, Utah doesn't give a damn about the Constitution. And since they're controlled by the church doesn't give a damn about the Constitution, despite giving lip service to it every 4th of July. And so, yeah, I had complained, and now everybody has gone silent when I complained against the police, because the police sided with Beth. And now everybody's silent. The case management no longer coming by anymore, and everybody else is recognizing that. And so I'm telling them, it's because of me. I had to call the cops on the cops. And so yes, something was done, but I'm sorry guys, if you're listening, that's not enough. In the beginning, all they had to do was leave me alone, but they didn't. And I know exactly what goes on here. They'll back off for a little bit, and then they'll regroup and try again. And that's what they did. They moved Karen to Valley Woods. Valley Woods is supposed to be minimal assistance, but they've now made it assisted living. In fact, I think it might actually be no assistance. I'd have to double check on that. But I remember she was calling me when she first got there and saying that she's having to go to the nurse that's there to get her meds. That means it's assisted living, like Valley Plaza. So they were punishing her in order to punish me for complaining about my rights. And so, yeah, they may not be coming around, but they made sure to throw in a few blows in that process. And they'll come back again. You just get new people hired, just like Beth was, and they'll interpret it as, oh, okay, we need to go and make it assisted living. I'm going to check here to see if Danville Development has changed back their website, or if they're still calling this for people with severe mental illness. Danville, Development, Utah. Affordable HUD housing. Let's see. I need the housing thing. Partner housing. Yep. Danville works closely with Valley Behavioral Health and Davis Behavioral Health to help find homes for people with a mental illness and suffering from chronic homelessness. Valley Behavioral Health is blah, blah, blah. Okay. Housing managed by Valley Behavioral Health. Safe, Have 1 and 2, Valley Villa, Valley Crossroads, Oak Ridge East and West. That's me. These properties are subsidized housing for individuals with severe and persistent mental illness. They haven't changed it from when they changed it. So this is wrong. This housing is not for people with severe and persistent mental illnesses. That would mean that this is assisted living. They're not coming around anymore because I complained that Valley Behavioral Health calls this place independent housing. No assistance at all. So yeah, isn't it interesting that they fired our landlord at the same time they put in a new case manager? Yeah. And so even though I got my freedom, they don't want me to be free. They want to subject me into bondage again, to take away my rights. And they tried to have me move to other places back when my ex was not being cared for. Second ex. Karen. And so, yeah, everybody in this neighborhood, they know that these houses are for mentally ill. And as a result, everybody's afraid of us. Because they don't know when we're going to go and scare them. And yet people here are suffering. The church will not take care of us. We're the poor and the needy. The government ain't doing it. We're getting less than minimum wage. Even though it's HUD subsidized, they're still giving us less than minimum wage. The subsidy is supposed to help us above and beyond a minimal living so that we can get out of these places and go back into the community. But then they say, oh, you can only have $2,000 in savings, which means when the next month with the next check comes around, you've got to have less than $2,000 with that additional. It's not supposed to be done that way, but that's how they make it. And so we only have $1,000 in savings. And if you have a payee, the payee forces a savings on you, and they won't, you never see that money. we get screwed out of $1,000 because they say, well, it's a case of emergencies when the Social Security no longer gives you a check. But when they do that, they call back all the money that you currently have. So yeah, we never get that money. We will never get it. We lose $1,000 on top of getting less than minimum wage. Taking care of the poor and the needy is the #1 priority of every country. And a country is to be evaluated by the manner in which they take care of their most vulnerable. And so, yeah, when I contacted the police officer about CenturyLink trying to take $175, and then CenturyLink says, no, our records show that we're not trying to get $175 from you. You're all paid up with the last bill you submitted. Somebody's hacking or pretending to be who they're not. I'm under cyber attack, as I've also talked about in another video with other ways that my identity has been stolen. So don't be surprised if I all of a sudden become famous, that Photoshop pictures that are difficult to discern all of a sudden pop up. Or videos now. They now have videos. Photoshop videos. I just hope they make me better than I am. Something to be proud of rather than embarrassed and ashamed. Oh man, they made it smaller. That's all part of the compromise thing. So, but yeah, that's what's going on in my life. That's how Utah treats the poor and the sick and afflicted. They don't. We're a burden to them, and they just want us gone. There's a housing crisis in Utah. Like I said, over 1 million are in need of homes. And Valley, has around a couple hundred. So I was lucky to get in. But because the therapist dropped me when I was at Plaza, that's why they put me here back in 2015. Because I was trying to get an apartment out in the world, out in the community. I had one. I would have had it. I just didn't have it the way they wanted it. They wanted money orders, 2 separate money orders, and be the first to get to their office after seeing the apartment. I had seen the apartment, and then I was told by the woman there, now just go to the office, submit the 2 money orders. Money orders? What? And so I had to call my payee, and they said, no, we can't get it to you. We'll make an exception, and we'll have it available for you tomorrow morning, or before the afternoon. And so I went there the afternoon, got the 2 money orders. I have to take bus transit. They don't give us cars. I almost considered buying a scooter with the Medicaid reimbursement for the 6 years of being locked up. But yeah, all that's gone. Because remember, you can only have $2,000 at the end of each month. If you have more, like a penny more, and they take away your money, and they reevaluate you, and you have to resubmit. And but because of the Medicaid reimbursement, they gave me 9 months to spend it. So that was gone long before Christmas that year. So that's why I have what I have. You can see my couch here, and you've probably seen me in my recliner, and you've seen the computer technology and stuff. I wasn't supposed to have this here. This is supposed to be furnished apartments. But they made an exception in my case because of the Medicaid reimbursement that I needed to spend on. And so they said, oh, okay, well, we'll waste it at RC Willey where they're super expensive, but they'll deliver for you. I wanted, I didn't really need this. The recliner, yes, but the couch and stuff, it could be cheaper stuff. I don't care. Yes, I took interior design, and I understand the value of aesthetically nice stuff, but I don't need it. And the computer equipment, I just want them to work. I don't want to be hacked. But yeah, that's why they put me out here, where I wasn't supposed to get any assistance whatsoever, but they were doing minimal assistance here. And apparently they weren't supposed to be doing that. And but that's what happens when you only have 200 apartments and you have to decide among the million who gets an apartment. And so when I was trying to get that other house out in the community and I didn't get it, they immediately all of a sudden had an apartment available for me. Oh yeah, we got one for you. And it's out there in West Valley City. Oh, but it's right there by the bus stop. It takes an hour to get downtown now. And depending on the bus driver, you have 2.5 hours on your ticket. Some of them will raise it up to 3 hours, but so that doesn't give me much time to go to Supersmith's downtown. So it's a good thing Amazon is available now. But I didn't know about Amazon when I got out. Everything was new to me. 6 years taken away from me. And nobody wants to give me my life back. They think that, oh, the Medicaid reimbursement, that's compensation for what we did to you. That was blown in less than 9 months. That's nowhere near enough compensation for the loss of my kids, for the loss of my life, for the loss of my property, which once my parents had gotten the state to remove me from society, they trashed my stuff. My mom, however, did salvage a scrapbook. So that photo of the New York Cabaret at Rick's was preserved. She now serves as a symbol and is the motivation behind why I stood up for my kids, because I gave up on Leanne, and she now serves as a symbol to never give up, never be silent, never stop fighting for my rights. Because there's no way she's going to be available. I'm sure she's happily married and rich. The guy was studying computers back in the days of DOS. So I'm sure he's sitting pretty, and they've got a nice white picket fence and probably a dozen kids. So good for her. But there's no way in the world I'm going to let anybody step on me. That's why I stood up for myself when Beth came in and Danville Development put in a new person. And that's why I called the cops on the cops, because I wasn't going to let them push me around either. I have rights now. I always had rights, even when they took them away. There's a human rights violation going on in the state of Utah by the LDS Church, not just by the nation. And it must stop. They attempted to murder me. So, but yeah, as I've done video after video, Mormons, the church isn't true. That's why they're doing this. It's not Jesus. They're not inspired by Jesus. Jesus doesn't do this, doesn't create a mental diagnosis to lock somebody away from society. That's not how Jesus did it. If you notice, Jesus actually hung out with the mentally ill. He was their best buddy. And so what the church is doing is exactly what the Pharisees were doing. And Jesus, if you hadn't paid attention, and if you need a refresher, read over Matthew chapter 23. Jesus tears one up on the Pharisees and the scribes. Blind fools, blind guides, hypocrites, over and over and over again, listing all of their violations and their sins. That's what I've done here on my channel. I am listing all of the hypocrisy, all of the sins, all of the crimes, all of the corruption, all of the wickedness of the church. Because you guys don't care about the government stuff. That's on my website. Alright, so I see that we're at 1 hour and almost 20 minutes. So only those loyal are the ones still listening. But understand that we are in a nation that is supposed to have a constitution to guide and direct us. Anyone who will not follow the Constitution is an enemy of the people. Anyone, regardless of government, business, religion. The Constitution is the supreme law. Everyone must follow it. And what does it say we have to do? Give equal rights of life, liberty, and property to every citizen. There are no slaves. There are no subhumans. Women are equal. Anything that violates our rights in the Constitution is an attack on the Constitution, this nation, and we the people. And the church is a part of that criminal enterprise against us, that conspiratorial treason against America. Alright, so most of you should be out of church. And so in a couple hours, when this finally gets on YouTube, you guys will be able to watch it. And we'll see if the title can catch your attention. think oh yeah, me in a hospital bed as a thumbnail. Or the other one of me surrounded by church security. Maybe I'll try to figure out how to put both. Do a picture merge. Alright, that's it.